There we go. Record is hit. Another episode of the Labor Knots podcast, joined by a close friend. First time on the podcast?
It is my first time on the
I
podcast.
can't believe, shame on us, because you probably should have been on the podcast before,
Yeah, probably a couple of times by now, I
but
think.
I'm sure you've listened to every episode. But
Oh,
some people will absolutely recognize Christy's voice, but we are joined here by Christy Slusarenko from MoveUp. Thank you very much for joining us, especially through this kind of new medium, the new kind of Zoomcast, these new versions of the Labor Knots. Thank you very much for joining us.
no, thanks for having me.
Can you tell folks, so we've had David Black has been on, Annette's been on. So can you tell us a little bit though, just a refresher on what kind of work MoveUp members do?
So MoveUp represents just under 13,000 office workers generally at the moment. Give or take, we're fluctuating, as most people know. A lot of inside workers, IT departments. We represent the other union offices and their admin staff. We have a few other variances of memberships that aren't quite office workers, like with the car rental agencies, myself at Capilano University, coming from the Children's Center, and we're all over the province and part of the National COPE Union in Canada.
Yeah, and so some folks that maybe have been around for a little bit longer and are more kind of union nerdy types would probably remember that your union was at one point COPE 378.
Technically, we're still 378, COPE 378. But yeah, we decided about, I guess it was almost 6 years ago now, to do a bit of a rebranding. And so, hopefully there are going to be more locals across Canada that decide that MoveUp sounds a little bit better than the COPE. And, we are the movement of United Office Professionals. And, it's working for us so far. I definitely like the distinction away from CUPE now, because it took my mom probably a good 6 months to realize that I wasn't a CUPE member, even after I elected and had been part of the union for 14 years, but that's okay.
That's funny. I was willing to keep the secret. I wasn't going to say that you folks are still COPE 378, but that's fine if you want to let the cat out of the bag.
you know, on paper, we are in some aspects.
So the way it works, though, so you are one of the vice presidents for MoveUp, and my understanding of how it works, and this isn't just your union, this is in some other unions as well, is you are one of the vice presidents representing a certain kind of sector of workers. Is that correct?
Yes and no.
Okay.
So the three vice presidents, we have an ICBC vice president, which oversees the entire ICBC membership, which is our largest at about 5,000 folks. Then we have our utilities vice president. So in their portfolio, they will have BC Hydro, the two Fortis Gas and Fortis Electric, and then there is like a small little power tech group that it's also part of the BC Hydro. And then there's the combined units, which is absolutely everything else that MoveUp will cover. And that is where I sit. And in that group, we're broken up into 5 different distinct categories as well. So we'll have the labor group, we have the transit group, there's the shipping transport, which is our car rentals. We also have a small distributor called Tree Island Steel, where we represent members. Then we have the finance and insurance group. So a lot of the credit unions are unionized with us. BCAA, there's a few of the insurance brokers and the roadside assistants there. And then we have what's called the miscellaneous group, which is, where I come from. It's my home ground, being that Capilano University is the only university that MoveUp represents, and anything else that doesn't fit into the other 4, it gets put into the combined units. So, when we are organizing and we get new certifications, they are falling into my portfolio. And right now we're sitting at about 88, 89, and a couple in progress.
I was about to say that sounds like a lot of bargaining, a lot of collective agreements.
I don't know them all. Don't worry. There's
Yeah.
no learn them all.
And shout out to the good folks that are servicing those members, because I know my day job doing some of that kind of work, that's a lot of collective agreements. Okay, so so I think it's no kind of big surprise. One of the big reasons why I really wanted to get you on the podcast, other than the fact that you haven't been on before, is because of the type of stuff coming out of Translink right now.
Mhm.
So Translink has made a number of layoffs, and before we hit record, we were talking about and you were actually educating me on what kind of ramifications, the ripple effects of this type of layoff, what it's having across a lot of different unions. I didn't even realize how many different types of workers, types of unions were actually all under this kind of bigger Translink umbrella. So can you give like a Coles Notes version of kind of where we're at right now, where we're sitting with these layoffs?
So what it sounds like from the conversations that we've had with the other organizations that represent the workers under that umbrella is each of us are seeing about a 30% reduction in staff. So, for us at Coast Mountain Bus, our membership, it usually sits around 480 to 500. We're going to be losing 130 folks. Translink, we're about 225 to 250, and we have 30 confirmed layoffs. And the sad part is we know that this is the first wave of layoffs. Translink is making no secret about how much money that they're currently losing. I think they're going at 2.5 million a day up to $75 million a month is what they're hemorrhaging and losing in their fares. So they're looking at ways to obviously save some money. They don't have the money to pay people to do the jobs that they're doing. So they're going to be reducing services. They're going to be laying people off. And, it's not I think, in our community's best interest or the interest of other workers that are actually having to get to the workplaces to work in the jobs that are potentially saving lives, like keeping the grocery stores going, the hospitals, nurses, and even the janitorial staff that are really stepping up to ensure that everybody out there is staying safe.
Yeah, it's one of those things, like there's so many different layers. So, and I was talking, as I told you, I was talking with Kim Novak from UFCW 1518 in the last podcast about the ripple effects of layoffs, any type of disruption in service when it comes to Translink companies, what kind of effects that has on all of the workers that are being deemed essential, or just folks that are trying to get to medical appointments, or what even volunteer and deliver food, whatever the case may be. The ironic thing about this is not only does this affect a massive amount of workers, it also affects like the workers that are directly connected to those jobs, but then it also affects a whole swath of workers that rely on transit to actually get to work to give us the services that we're still getting.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's like a massive domino or ripple. I don't think there's a really good outcome to any of this with the cuts that they're doing. I know that their hands are tied. They simply don't have the money. They're not collecting fares. Ridership is down because people are working from home. So even if they were collecting fares, they're still not going to be getting that much. Translink is also reliant on gas taxes. Sadly, that's a huge part of why our gas is so expensive in Vancouver, is that a lot of the funding comes from that gas tax. And I haven't been to the gas station since middle of March, early March. So I don't know, I can't remember off the top of my head what percentage of tax of gas goes to Translink, but we know that there's 60% less cars on the road. So the governments aren't stepping up to provide funding for Translink, and that's where our issue is, in my opinion.
And so is that kind of the direction we should be sending our kind of displeasure or anger or angst, whatever you want to call it? Is that what we should be doing, is kind of sending it to government?
100%. we're sitting here and we're listening every single day to all the initiatives that the federal government is putting in place or the provincial government's putting in place. And, they're coming up with money. They're coming up with wage subsidies. They're coming, with the brand new CRB credit and EI. And if you think about it, the governments are going to be paying people that are getting laid off regardless. So why would the government not get that money and put it into the hands of the employer so the employer can keep folks working and keep the system running at, we're not going to be a maxima or like the full 100% capacity, but they can maximize it to make sure that people are getting there. I was on a conversation earlier this morning that, it was a great start when COVID originally came into play in our communities, that they were taping off every other seat on the bus and reducing the number of people on the seats. But in our opinion, that was a bit of a band-aid to it. They're reducing the number of folks that can get on the bus. They're reducing the number of buses that are running. And there's still people that need to get on the buses to get where they need to go. So people are getting late. Like, could you imagine being a nurse knowing that you have to go on to your 12-hour shift because you were there to save someone's life and a bus goes past you because it's too full and you don't know when the next bus is going to come because your service has been reduced?
Yeah, it doesn't. So it seems like it's something that there shouldn't even be the possibility of it happening. And like this, the kind of how these things are funded, how our public transit infrastructure is funded, is probably a whole other podcast or potentially a series of podcasts. But I mean, it doesn't. If there's, I can't think of I can think of other essential services, but if providing transit isn't an essential service, then I don't know, like, I mean, really, what is, like, how can we say, at its core, how can we even really say that, like, a liquor store is essential service, but transit isn't?
Mm-hmm. Well,
Like,
lots more people are buying the alcohol. They haven't started giving out free alcohol like they're doing with the free transit fares. Not that I'm
but
saying.
it's still like, so I understand, like, I get the funding is an issue, obviously, and hands seem to be somewhat tied, but the reality is, like, it seems like this is one of those times, if we're going to be giving support, or if we're going to be you know giving subsidies to any group of workers or group of employers, then I think this makes complete sense.
Yeah, I can't disagree with you on that one.
And so on this one, so we were talking a little bit before, so where can people go if they want to do something about this? Like, how do we send the message to government?
So we have a couple of options. Hopefully there's folks on this webcast or podcast that are able to or already following us on social media. We've been doing a lot of social media presence and promoting our own MoveUp webpage that we've created that is called Fund Transit Now. And we've given some tips and some advice on how you can start reaching out to your political folks. Contact your MPs, contact your MLAs, call your mayors, because they need to start hearing from us. We have bullet points for you if you're unsure, if you've never made any of those phone calls before. But we do know that now is the time that we need to work together as a transit community and society, and make sure that we're telling our stories. Like, it's not something that we should keep secret, that how this reduction in transit use is going to affect every single person's life. And, they need to hear from the heart of the matter. We know a lot of these folks that are making this decision, they probably don't ride transit, or if they do ride transit, it's because they get transit for free. So how is it going to affect you? And what is it that you want to see? And the louder the voice that we make, the hopefully the quicker we'll get some sort of response and action.
Yeah, and please, we will put a link up to that website, and so that people can get involved in that campaign. It's one of those, I was thinking about this, I think it was yesterday, I can't remember who I was talking to, but I'm like, it's super ironic because for the majority, the people that are using transit right now are people that need to use transit.
Yep.
You're probably not going to be using transit right now because you feel like you need to do something more for climate change. right now, the folks that are on those buses and SkyTrains and using transit, those folks are there because they don't have another option, I think. And now I'm sure that's not 100%, but pretty close though. Like I know myself, sometimes I would choose to use transit. Right now, if I really have to go somewhere, I'm driving.
Yeah, and here's the thing, you have the luxury of owning a vehicle.
Yeah, right.
You're thinking, if we have a lot of the janitorial staff, we know they're some of the lowest paid marginalized workers that we have in our workforce.
Mhm.
As sad as it is, they don't have the funds to buy a car, pay for car insurance. Public transit is their affordable option to get to work. And you're absolutely right. People aren't getting on the bus to go and spend a day downtown shopping on Robson and not wanting to pay for parking in the parkades. They're going from A to B and B to A to get to their job because that's what they need to do. And that is their loyalty and their responsibility to all of us as citizens in our community.
Yeah, and so again, please, people, go on that campaign. It doesn't take very long to take a small amount of action, and then that action can have a huge amount of effect on change. Another thing,
And
sorry, what was that? Sorry, I cut you off.
share it.
Share it. Yes, that's the biggest part. Share it. So another thing that I wanted to talk about, and it kind of plays into um, this kind of digital campaign stuff, is you folks at MoveUp had a big driving public campaign, which was all about keeping auto insurance public. Now, I think obviously the focus becomes right now on, layoffs and COVID, but how does a union like MoveUp keep that kind of campaign kind of surviving in these times, or do you just kind of keep the gas pedal, keep the foot on the gas pedal?
Well, we're very, very fortunate at MoveUp because we have an outstanding communications team and they are phenomenal at their multitasking. It's kind of funny because, the last time that we did anything and traveled for MoveUp is we were over at legislature and we were lobbying for our driving public campaign. And so that was like February 26th and 27th. That's where we were. And
Wow.
then boom, the next week COVID is blowing up. So we've not abandoned that. We still have it up on our website. We are still pushing for it. I think instinctively the first 4 weeks was managing and making sure our units are going to be okay. ICBC right now, they seem to be doing pretty good. They are still at the bargaining table, so there's a lot of focus on how they can get that deal going. But we know that the members transitioned to safe working environments by a lot of them being able to work from home. The customer facing groups, they are starting to get plexiglass and making sure that they're not going to be in danger and they're allowed to be social distance from customers coming in. So now it is shifting back to, yes, let's save public auto because the attack is still there.
Mhm.
It's not going to go away. Before this started, we were talking about how some of the private insurance people are offering different discounts that ICBC hasn't started doing it yet. But it's more beneficial. Like, yeah, maybe you'll save 25% on your insurance right now, but how much is that 25% actually going to cost you at the end of the day? Like, there's still the pros and cons, and for all of us, the public insurance is the way to go. We've done a lot of research and that website's still up and running and still being updated as much as information is coming into us as well.
Yeah, and I think, and I'm thrilled to hear that, because I think so the more of these podcasts that I do and the more union folks that I speak to, we almost ironically have this weird responsibility to communicate to our members right now, to talk to them about where they can get support, talk to them, help them through potential layoffs, for all of the good reasons that unions need to talk to their members. We need to talk to our members now, and we need to use different tools to speak to them, right? But then now that we're going to have all of their ears, it's like, okay, but then we now have the opportunity to kind of talk to them about all of the other good things that we are doing. And so I'm happy to hear that these campaigns, not just of course driving public, but some of the other ones that other unions are doing, that there still is a focus on that. And just because I think we have this, I think a lot of union members are now coming to their union and wanting to hear what's going on, because the union is kind of like this unedited source of information that we can trust sometimes more than, you know, those other places where we get news, especially the labor knots. Like, you are getting the real deal. There's nothing but facts here on labor knots.
100%. I'm sure it's #1 streaming podcast out there. No, it is
Somewhere.
for me, I'm seeing so many more rank and file members reaching out to us. And it isn't all about, oh my God, I'm getting laid off, help me. Sure, it starts out that way, but it's bringing them a lot more into the fold, and they're really starting to understand the other goods that the unions provide for folks. And, we're seeing a huge increase in job stewards that are signing up right now, which is fantastic. We're seeing people joining our committees. We're going to be hoping to really activate a lot of our members into this Fund Public Transit Now campaigns, and they're stepping up left and right, asking, how can I help? What can I do? And, to me, that's one of the reasons why I decided to run for this role.
Yeah, I think, yeah, there's this weird opportunity that comes around when unions, when union members, and then when society kind of, when these things happen, we kind of galvanize and come together a little bit. Look, so I don't want to take up a huge more amount of your time, because I know that you are a very, very busy woman. But if folks want to find out more about what you're doing, we're going to link to a bunch of the MoveUp links, but can people follow you on interwebs? Are you easy to find on the interwebs?
Yeah, I am. Of course, I'm on all of the social media platforms, and a lot of them are open so people can find out a little bit who I am and what we do. MoveUp website, I'm fortunate that I have one of those last names, that I am the only Christy Slusarenko around right now, and pretty much anyone else with that last name is related to me. So.
That's funny. That's funny. Okay, so folks, please go and find Christy, follow, MoveUp, all those things. If you'd like to hear more from myself, I am at Say Hi to Carlos on all things social media, and I'm sure you're already hitting the Instagram follows, or the Twitter follows, or the YouTube subscriptions, and the YouTube notifications, and the Facebook links and likes. We're kind of all over the place. That's the way we like to be. Thank you very much again for coming on the Labor Knots. Thank you.